Welcome back, story lovers. Today, we're journeying to a quiet little town, nestled among rolling hills, where a story of kindness and magic is about to unfold. Pull up a chair, get cozy, and let's dive into the heartwarming tale of the elves and the kind shoemaker. In this quaint town lived a shoemaker named Tom. He was a kind man with a gentle heart, but his pockets were nearly always empty. Every single day, from the moment the sun peeked over the rooftops until the moon cast long shadows on the cobblestones, Tom worked tirelessly. He'd sit hunched over his workbench, his fingers nimble and quick, fixing worn-out shoes and sewing together old, cracked pieces of leather. He poured all his effort into his craft, hoping to make ends meet. But no matter how hard he tried, it seemed his luck just wouldn't turn. The coins he earned were never quite enough. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight faded from his small shop, Tom sighed heavily. He looked down at his workbench, where only a small scrap of leather remained. He turned to his loyal cat, Whiskers, who was curled up by the cold fireplace. "Oh, Whiskers," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "This is all the leather I have left. I can only make one last pair of shoes." His heart felt heavy, but he refused to give up. With practiced hands, he carefully cut the leather into the pieces he would need. He arranged them neatly on his workbench, ready for stitching. "I'll finish the shoes tomorrow," he said softly, trying to muster a little hope. Then, with a final pat for Whiskers, he blew out his candle and climbed the creaky stairs to his small room above the shop, falling into a troubled sleep. But as the town fell silent and the stars began to twinkle brightly in the night sky, something magical happened in the little shop. A tiny sparkle, like a captured firefly, appeared near the workbench. Then another, and another. Soon the quiet room was filled with faint, tinkling giggles. Out from the deepest shadows, two tiny elves crept, no bigger than Tom's own hand. They had sparkling eyes, rosy cheeks, and wore bright red hats perched jauntily on their heads. Their tiny shoes glittered like starlight with every silent step they took. They hopped onto the workbench and looked at the perfectly cut pieces of leather. One elf whispered to the other, "Let's help him. He works so hard every day and is so very kind." The other elf nodded eagerly, his bright eyes shining. "Yes, we'll make the most beautiful shoes in the whole town." With a shared smile, they picked up Tom's tiny tools and set to work, their fingers moving with incredible speed and skill. The next morning, the rooster's crow woke Tom from his dreams. He came down the stairs, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, expecting to face his difficult task. But when he looked at his workbench, he froze. He blinked, then blinked again, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. "Good heavens!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with utter disbelief. There on the table, where he had left only pieces of leather, sat a finished pair of shoes. But they weren't just any shoes. They were perfect. The stitching was flawless, the leather shone with a rich luster, and the design was more elegant than anything Tom could have imagined. He picked them up, his hands trembling slightly. They were a masterpiece. He placed the magnificent shoes in his shop window, a single beacon of hope in his otherwise empty display. Before long, a wealthy lady, known for her exquisite taste, happened to be passing by. Her eyes were immediately drawn to the stunning shoes. She stopped, her face lighting up with admiration. "Oh my!" she cried, rushing into the shop. "These are absolutely wonderful. The craftsmanship is divine. I'll take them." She didn't even haggle over the price. In fact, she paid him far more than he would have ever dared to ask enough money to buy a hearty meal, a large supply of the finest leather, and even some warm clothes to ward off the coming chill. Tom's heart swelled with gratitude. That night, feeling a renewed sense of hope, Tom cut out the leather for 2 new pairs of shoes and left the pieces on his workbench, just as before. And just like before, when he woke the next morning, he found 2 more pairs of exquisitely crafted shoes waiting for him. They were even more beautiful than the first. This magical pattern continued. Every night, Tom would leave new pieces of leather on his table, and every morning he would find them transformed into the most beautiful shoes anyone had ever seen. His little shop became the talk of the town. People traveled from far and wide to buy his famous footwear. With his newfound fortune, Tom didn't become greedy. Instead, he grew even happier and kinder. His generosity knew no bounds. He shared his money with neighbors who were struggling, ensuring everyone had enough to eat. He gave warm, sturdy shoes to poor children who had none, their joyful faces being the greatest reward he could ask for. His shop was no longer just a place of business. It was a beacon of kindness in the community. One cold winter night, as snow fell softly outside, Tom and his wife decided they had to discover the identity of their secret helpers. "We must thank them," his wife insisted, so they hid behind a thick curtain in a corner of the shop, waiting patiently in the darkness. As the clock struck midnight, they saw the familiar sparkles of light, and the 2 tiny elves appeared. Tom and his wife held their breath, peeking quietly through a small gap in the curtain. They gasped in astonishment as they watched the elves climb onto the workbench. The tiny creatures began to sew and hammer, singing a cheerful tune as they worked. "We stitch, we sew, with happy cheer, to help kind hearts we hold so dear." Their voices were like tiny bells, filling the room with a magical melody. But as Tom and his wife watched, they noticed something that made their hearts ache. The elves were dressed in little more than rags, shivering slightly in the cold night air. "Oh my," whispered Tom's wife, her eyes filling with compassion. "They have no proper clothes, only little rags to keep them warm." The very next day, a new plan formed in their minds. Instead of buying more leather, they went to the market and bought the softest wool and the brightest threads. All day, Tom and his wife worked together, not on shoes, but on a special project. With the same care and precision Tom gave his finest work, they made 2 tiny sets of clothes: little shirts, warm trousers, cozy coats, and even miniature hats. Tom himself crafted the most delicate little shoes he had ever made. That night, instead of leaving leather on the workbench, they carefully arranged the tiny outfits as a gift for their mysterious friends. When the elves arrived, they stopped in their tracks, their eyes wide with surprise. They saw the tiny clothes and shoes laid out just for them. Clothes, one whispered in awe, "For us." The other picked up a tiny coat, his face glowing with pure joy. "From the kind Shoemaker. How lovely." They quickly shed their rags and put on their new outfits. They fit perfectly. Overjoyed, the elves began to dance and twirl around the workbench, their new shoes tapping a happy rhythm on the wood. They sang a new song, a song of gratitude and farewell. "We've done our part, with joy and grace. Now kindness lives in every place." With one final happy wave towards the curtain where they knew their friends were hiding, they danced out of the shop and disappeared into the snowy night. After that night, the elves never returned, but they didn't need to. Tom's shop was always bustling with happy customers, his reputation for quality and kindness having spread throughout the land. He continued to work hard, and his life and the lives of those around him were forever changed for the better. His heart was always full of gratitude and love, and so the once-poor shoemaker learned a valuable lesson that he carried with him always. Kindness is its own reward, and it brings a kind of magic that lasts forever, the kind that stays in your heart. Thank you so much for joining me for this beautiful story. Remember, a little bit of kindness can create the most wonderful magic in the world. If you enjoyed our time together, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more magical tales, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in magic.